Stand by. Oh, there I am. What's up, party people? KeysDAN, RadioWhat.com, DJLittleRock.com, coming to you live and in living color from the Radio What studios. And this is my podcast, What Makes You Smarter? It's an extension of the RadioWhat.com internet radio station that I've been running for quite some time. And if you need DJ services, where do I always send you? DJLittleRock.com. One more time, DJLittleRock.com. Check availability and get a free price quote, and maybe you could have me at your next event. You know I like to party with the people. The people need to be entertained. Are you not entertained? Let me entertain you. Make your next thing a big one. This week's shows, as it is Friday, I usually have the video dance party karaoke jam over at the Rab in Conway, Arkansas. But here we have, looking out my window, maybe 2 inches of snow and ice. And that is preventing us from sliding up and down the hills. The hill, particularly where the Rab sits on. So it's kind of tough to get up that hill to go and visit the fine people at the Rab in Conway, Arkansas. So tonight's show is canceled, sadly. Hopefully we'll be back next Friday night. Yeah. Also, if you'd like to tell your story or hear the stories of others, I encourage you to check out my other podcast. It's called What Makes You Famous. Find it everywhere using the hashtag What Makes You Famous. Now, on with the show. Today on the program, 10 things you need to know today for Friday, February 4th, 2022. 10 things you need to know today. Number 1, Biden says horrible ISIS leader died in Syria raid. President Biden said Thursday that Islamic State leader Abu Ibrahim al-Hashimi al-Qurayshi blew himself up and members of his family during a counterterrorism raid by U.S. Special Forces in northwestern Syria. Quote, "This horrible terrorist leader is no more," end quote, Biden said at the White House. There were no U.S. casualties during the operation. U.S. forces had to destroy a disabled helicopter before leaving the ISIS-safe house. The operations came as concerns rise about the possible resurgence of the Islamic extremist group. The raid was the second that has targeted an ISIS leader in Syria's rebel-held Idlib province. Then ISIS leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi died after detonating a suicide belt during an October 2019 U.S. raid on his compound. This is according to the Washington Post and the Associated Press. Number 2, U.S. says Russia planning video of fake Ukrainian attack to justify invasion. The Biden administration on Thursday said Russia was planning to produce a fake video purporting to show Ukrainians attacking inside Russia or targeting Russian-speaking people in Ukraine to give Russian forces an excuse to invade Ukraine. Quote, "The production of this propaganda video is one of a number of options that the Russian government is developing as a fake pretext to initiate and potentially justify military aggression against Ukraine," end quote, State Department spokesman Ned Price said. A spokesman for the Kremlin, which claims the U.S. and its allies are the ones trying to force a war, dismissed the claims, saying Americans have made similar allegations before. Quote, "But nothing ever came of them," end quote. This is according to the New York Times and CNN. Number 3, Facebook parent Meta suffers $250 billion stock crash. Meta platform shares plummeted 26% Thursday following a disappointing earnings report, erasing more than $250 billion in market value in the biggest one-day loss ever for a U.S. company. The Facebook parent reported weaker than expected earnings after the market closed Wednesday. The last quarter was the first ever in which Facebook lost users. Analysts said that the painful quarter reflected tough competition from TikTok and other rivals, while the magnitude of the stock's plunge demonstrated how much mammoth tech companies have to lose if they run out of room to grow. Bloomberg noted that Mega's Thursday loss exceeded the market value of 470 of the companies in the S&P 500. This is according to Bloomberg. Number 4, winter storm heads toward northeast after hammering the south and the Midwest. A winter storm hit a large swath of the south and in the Midwest with rain, sleet, ice, and snow on Thursday, leaving at least 3 people dead and more than 300,000 without power from Texas to the Ohio Valley. Airlines canceled thousands of flights, and more than 91 million people were under winter weather warnings or advisories. The bad weather also triggered tornado threats. One part of New Mexico got more than 3 feet of snow. Several Midwestern states got 1 foot. The storm was expected to move into the northeast on Friday and blanket the northern New York and northern New England with ice and up to a foot of snow. This is according to CNN and the Associated Press. Number 5. New Zealand announces easing of anti-COVID border restrictions. New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern said Thursday that her country would soon start phasing out border restrictions aimed at curbing the spread of COVID-19 beginning February 27th. Fully vaccinated New Zealand citizens, residents, and certain visa holders will be allowed in from Australia and will not need to undergo a 10-day quarantine at a government-run facility. Travelers will still have to self-quarantine 2 weeks later. Vaccinated people from anywhere in the world will be allowed entry with self-quarantine. By October, after nearly 2 years of shuttered borders, all pandemic travel restrictions should be lifted. Quote, "We must turn to the importance of reconnection," end quote, Ardern said. Quote, "Families and friends need to reunite. Our businesses need skills to grow," end quote. This is according to BBC News and the Washington Post. Number 6. Biden measures to fight gun violence. President Biden met with New York City Mayor Eric Adams on Thursday to discuss ways to fight gun violence. About 2 weeks after the 2 New York Police Department officers were shot and killed by a man who had an illegal gun. The Justice Department will work with state and local law enforcement to address, quote, "drivers of violence," end quote, Biden said. The department is also sending more resources to task forces working to shut down the Iron Pipeline, the route used to illegally funnel guns from the South to the northern United States. Quote, "The answer is not to defund the police," end quote, Biden said. Quote, "It's to give you the tools, the training, the funding to be partners, to be protectors and community leaders," end quote. This is according to the New York Times and ABC 7. Number 7. 4 of British Prime Minister Boris Johnson's top aides resign. 4 top aides to the British Prime Minister Boris Johnson resigned on Thursday, adding to a political crisis over a series of parties at Johnson's Downing Street office and residents in the apparent violation of the government's own coronavirus lockdowns. Johnson's head of policy, Muniza Mirza, chief of staff, Dan Rosenfeld, principal private secretary, Martin Reynolds, and communications director, Jack Doyle, quit just days after a damning report that blamed the scandal on a, quote, "failure of leadership," end quote. News of the parties fueled angry calls for Johnson to step down. He said he was staying, but apologized and promised change. Mirza said she was resigning over what she called an inappropriate comment Johnson made about the opposition Labor Party, Keir Starmer. This is according to Reuters and CNN. Number 8, Putin and Xi show solidarity in Beijing after U.S. warning over Ukraine. Russian President Vladimir Putin and Chinese leader Xi Jinping met in Beijing on Friday in a show of solidarity just hours after the Biden administration warned China not to help Russia evade potential sanctions over the Ukraine crisis. Russia has massed over more than 100,000 troops near the Ukrainian border in what U.S. and its allies say is preparation for an invasion. Western nations are threatening sanctions, and State Department spokesperson Ned Price said the U.S. and its allies, quote, have an array of tools, quote, end quote, to target, quote, foreign companies, including those in China, end quote, then try to get around them. Putin is attending the Friday opening of the ceremony of the Beijing Winter Olympics. The U.S. is observing a diplomatic boycott of the Games. This is according to the Washington Post. Number 9, Amazon profits nearly doubled in critical holiday quarter. Amazon on Thursday reported that its profits nearly doubled in the crucial holiday quarter despite higher costs from labor and supply crunches that stoked by the Omicron coronavirus variant surge. The online retail giant also got a $12 billion operating income boost from its investment in electric vehicle maker Rivian and from gains in its cloud computing and advertising businesses. The company's quarterly revenue reached $137.4 billion, up from $125.6 billion in the same period last year. Profit came in at $14.3 billion, up from $7.2 billion a year earlier. Amazon shares jumped by more than 14% after hours trading following the report. This is according to the Wall Street Journal. Number 10, Beijing Winter Olympics launch under Western diplomat boycott. The Beijing Winter Olympics officially start Friday with the opening ceremony, making the Chinese capital the first city to host both the Summer and Winter Games. These Olympic Games are among the most controversial in decades. The United States and some other Western governments have declared a diplomatic boycott to protest China's, quote, genocide and games against crimes. Let me do that again. Quote, genocide and crimes against humanity, end quote, in the northwestern region of Xinjiang, where the Chinese government has cracked down on Uyghurs and other mostly Muslim ethnic minorities. China also has been stamping out pro-democracy activism in Hong Kong. China halted ticket sales for Olympics events due to the COVID-19 pandemic and is only allowing some groups of invited spectators to view in person under strict coronavirus prevention measures. This is according to the Associated Press and ABC News. That's 10 things you need to know today for Friday, February 4th, 2022. Thank you so much for listening. This has been What Makes You Smarter, trying to make myself smarter by filling my head with political knowledge and the news of today. Does that make me smarter? I don't know. But as long as you like the sound of my voice, maybe you'll take the journey with me. Hey, stay tuned to this feed for more interesting things, or at least things that I find interesting and I want to learn more about. Also, if you'd like to tell your story or hear the stories of others, I encourage you to check out my other podcast. It's called What Makes You Famous. Find it everywhere using the hashtag What Makes You Famous. That's it for me. It's KeysDAN, RadioWhat.com, DJLittleRock.com. Peace. I'm out of here.